Emmanuel Pahud, you have the world literally as your playground, and you've lived so many different places. Is this your first visit to Norway and Oslo?
It is actually, fortunately, not my first visit to Norway and Oslo, because it's a beautiful country and great musical people also. I've been the first time actually at the invitation of Truls Mørk and Gregor Zubitsky when they were running the Stavanger Festival. And then my second visit was actually at the opening of the Opera House together with Berlin Philharmonic. And this is now, I think it was 2008. And so now, 7 years later, it was about time to come back again in the beautiful month of May and play some music together with Oslo Philharmonic.
Yes, you have brought with you a very new piece by the German composer Matthias Pincher. It's a rather interesting story behind the piece, I find. Can you?
Yeah, well, it's a quite a rather long story. Basically, Matthias Pincher was asked to take care of programming one concert at the Mozarteum, so in a place where you usually hear only the great masters of classics, to hear only one evening, one night of modern music. And this was associated with the fact that a lot of wealthy people, culture-oriented people in Salzburg had ordered and commissioned some sculptures that were around the city. And therefore we had basically a musical resonance to the sculptures that were spread around the city, and you had a projection of the sculpture, a presentation of the masterwork, and then it's musical echo composed specially for this occasion. And the idea of Matthias Pincher himself was to write a solo flute piece for me. We worked together back in 2006 when I premiered his flute concerto Transir, and I must say that the solo piece, I always told him in the time, if there's some material that you like to condense, to concentrate, and turn into a flute piece or a flute and some other instrument piece, please feel free to do so, because I think there is enough material there to do, and enough substance there to do this. And he came out with this rather unexpectedly, actually, because I was expecting rather a piece for ensemble or something, maybe with a prominent flute part, but it turned out to become a flute piece for flute alone, and which I'm very, very happy and proud to play and to carry with me now around the world.
Yes. Did you take an active part in the composition process?
I prefer not to interfere so much with the composing process. We met a couple of times before Matthias Pincher wrote his flute concerto, and then for this piece for solo flute, it was actually rather something that we'd already discussed about. It's about the boundaries of tone or not tone, about what is possible, what is not possible on the flute. And not everything is playable, but I see it, and I always understand it as an attempt to go there, as a way to go. And probably what I cannot play, the next generation will be able to play. This is always how it has been in the past. And this is what we should expect from what we are teaching to our next generation also.
So there are certain aspects, the technical aspects in this piece that would you like to show it on the flute, or you can tell our audience about it? I'm sure they're gonna hear some different sounds from the flute than what they're used to.
Yes, there are a combination of several effects and sounds that have been used actually already since, I think for the first time was by Varese in the early 20th century, with some percussion clicks with the keys on the flute, or with only tongue without blowing the air. We can do a lot of different sounds, but there's also some whistle tone which we can do around the main focus tone of the flute. There is also some resonance below. There is a huge variety of different sounds that you can produce on the flute, and the difficulty is to connect, the virtuosity is to connect these with one another in order to, because it's different styles of playing, different techniques of playing, and therefore it takes usually a while to move from one to the other one. And now in Matthias Pincher's music, it's really a challenge to move really fast, and as the only player I have to blow every note. Nobody's going to play something like in an orchestra there's a tutti, but there I really have to play every note. But some of them are playable when I expel the air. Some of the notes is when I inspire the air. I think the limitation is the fantasy of the composer. Unfortunately, with a guy like Matthias Pincher, not only he's very his music is very sensitive and sensible, but is also incredibly organized. And there's something organic at the same time. So it's a privilege to be able to work with such fantastic, great spirits. For me, whom I respect just as much as Boulez or as Debussy or Mozart.
Yes, being the flute, principal flute of the Berlin Philharmonic, and having an extensive solo career, sounds very fulfilling, but also probably challenging.
Well, it's the good thing is since I'm playing every day, I'm in good shape. Of course, I need a little bit of warm up and this kind of thing every day, and I need some time to focus on the repertoire I'm playing that very day. But I'm very fortunate also that the organization, the way the Berlin Philharmonic is run, and the way the musical life is run, it's something I've been doing since I was already when I was a student, age 19. My last year in the conservatory in Paris, I had a job in the Basel Radio Symphony Orchestra, so I was commuting between both places, and I also had in between some concerto or chamber music or recital appearances because I had won some competitions, and so I've been just growing into this thing without wanting to leave out any aspect of flute playing. Unfortunately, fortunately also my health is strong enough to allow me to do all these things together, so I don't have many days off. But I'm happy and I oxygenate myself a lot in my musical life. When I play a week in the orchestra, I really enjoy it, and when I play a week outside of the orchestra, I also really enjoy it. It is different periods of music. Mostly in the orchestra, we play mostly some romantic or early modern repertoire, as the flute as a solo instrument has mostly Baroque, classical works, and then modern works or 20th century works. So therefore, it's the best of the music I can choose from all these periods, and I also play some ethnic or some jazz projects sometimes. So therefore, I'm really trying to serve all that colorful musical world on this instrument called the flute.
I was looking at some blog you wrote in the Gramophone magazine, and there you, in between chamber music, concert, rehearsal, orchestra, everything, you found time to teach at a school, and I found that, is it important to you to go out to meet the children?
Well, it is not my primary occupation, but if I have half a day off on tour, I like to go and visit either the flute class in the conservatory or just go to school where they train children to be artistically oriented also, and as part of their musical education I will visit them. And we have some structures like this in Germany that was founded by pianist Lars Vogt, for instance, called Rhapsody in School, and it's a very nice program that allows visiting artists. It's a structure in every major city in Germany that allows a visiting artist to make contacts with the schools. And whenever possible, I like to do this kind of thing. So here in Oslo, after just landing, rehearsing with the orchestra, then I will visit the academy and listen to some talented flute players. Then tomorrow is dress rehearsal and concerts. I'll have meeting with my general manager also in the afternoon. So that's enough for one day also. And then next day I will go through somewhere other place and play some recital in the evening. That's life as a musician. I cannot expect to stay in my living room or in my practice room and people to come by and give me some money for what I'm doing.
No.
So it's about public appearance, about meeting the people, and it's better to live this life and not only in the moment on stage, but just to be really happy to be in contact with people.
When I listen to your rehearsal now, it's really, you're like a whirlwind and you're almost dancing. And I also heard that you have been studying the Stanislavski method that's used widely by actors. Or how do you find this helpful being a musician?
I do refer to Stanislavski sometimes while teaching, or mentioned it also. I read a book about him. I didn't visit any acting classes, but I attended some master classes for actors or for singers. because we are staging a performance always also as a musician, and despite the fact that we have an instrument, sometimes a music stand, and reading music, we still have to be living, experiencing what we are expressing in that moment. We have to be trying to recreate, I think it's our job as performers to recreate the life of what we imagine the composer had in his mind when he was writing this music. Just like an actor will have to, when he's dealing with Hamlet or with fantastic masterworks from the literature and the theater, will have to embodify these persons. So this is the challenge. Except we don't have words. We have music notes. We have, but it's full of conventions, traditions, of meanings, of emotions, of course, and is depicting a lot of different characters, particularly these things like Mozart concertos. It's like micro operas. It's like we have so many voices in dialogue with the principal instrument, and then leaving an imprint in the orchestra, and then comments from the second violins or the violas. Mozart himself playing this instrument, and always witty and always challenging the other ones. And this is this kind of dialogue that is actually happening. It is very important to be aware of what we're doing, and because if we're not convinced ourselves, how can we imagine convincing our audience?
I totally agree. Back to the orchestra. During Karajan's time, the orchestra had a very distinct sound. Of course, you were too young to perform with him. Do you find that the orchestra still has this sound, or how has it developed with Abbado and now Rattle?
So, Berlin Philharmonic is not an orchestra like Vienna Philharmonic or like Concertgebouw, where people are trained from their conservatory, and grow in this musical family. We hire on the audition day the person who's going to surprise us most, who's going to give us most potential to work on, and very often these people come from outside, and therefore we have more than half of the orchestra now is, or just about half of the orchestra is foreigner. Berlin people, there's not so many. It was, of course, in the Karajan years, it was a different situation because of the war and the post-war situation that really changed things. But personally, as a flute player, one of the founder of the orchestra was Joachim Andersen, a Danish flute player, and he was also the assistant of Hans von Bülow, conductor. Then there was Aurel Nicolet, Swiss-French school-trained flute player, who was hired in the Furtwängler period, just after the war. Then there was in the 70s James Galway as a foreigner, also flute player. Then in the 90s I joined this orchestra in this position. So there's a tradition of foreign flute players, I would say, and there's nothing really new about it. Back to the Berlin Philharmonic sound in the Karajan years, I only know it from the recordings, so I cannot say anything because I think these recordings are very manipulated. And also the hall was built in 1963, and it takes that moment that you are resident in a concert hall to develop a sound and to develop something together. So I think before that, the orchestra was, the Berlin Philharmonic was and Karajan were adapting to each other, because it was just about 7-8 years after Furtwängler had died. And then after that they started building this kind of sound ideal and to make it work in this concert hall, and many other concert halls in the world have been built on the model of the Philharmonie in Berlin, from Tokyo to Paris. Paris was opened only recently in January this year. It's a very similar proportions, much more modern and round shapes, but still the same principle for a concert hall. Then in the Abbado years, when I joined the orchestra in 1993, there was about 15 new people every year. Abbado's job was to integrate the new musicians, and many of which he knew from his youth orchestras, because he was the innovator in introducing youth orchestras, in doing some programs for youth orchestras. He always loved the contact with the young people, and of course it divided the orchestra between the old and the new generation, but in a way, in a certain way. But at the same time, it also allowed us to blend together over these 10-12 years that he stayed there, until he left in 2002. And then under Simon Rattle, it was a time of consolidation more, in terms of expanding the repertoire into more modern pieces, back to the Baroque, also in a very different style, with more specialized conductors also. Even though also already in the Abado years we had a lot of, I don't know, Manocourt, Herwege, Boulez, so very different conductors already. But now I think we even go more extreme in these different directions. And the versatility of the orchestra. And so we'll see who's going to be next, but it's probably going to be always a reaction to the predecessor.
Yeah, interesting, with some contrasts also.
Yes, very much contrast.
Yeah.
I think it's the Berlin Philharmonic is always wants to give itself challenges and to master these challenges, and this way, step by step, generation by generation, get the tradition of the symphonic orchestra moving. And right now moving into the 21st century. We did this by starting our digital concert hall program, also by doing all these education programs, by doing outreach projects. It's not something that we need directly because we're sold out. So it's, of course, with digital concert hall we can now sell 5,000 more tickets than or at least than we have in the concert hall. But we can also show the people what it is about music, and then they will also enjoy and go and listen to and identify to their own local orchestra.
Yeah, so every orchestra in the world is trying to reach out, and you're in a...
Well, you would be surprised how actually the orchestra who would need it the most are the one doing it the least.
Okay. And you do play with lots of different top-class orchestras, and it's common today to say that players on a certain level, that they all sound the same. We are looking for originality, you know. Do you find that the orchestras basically sound the same, or are there major differences?
I don't find that orchestras sound the same, and I was asked this recently again, that of course the national schools have been diluted a little bit compared to how it was 50 years ago, because of the development of globalization versus nationality or nationalism before that. But still, I think the people who play exactly like their school don't bring it any further. They stay within what they've been taught. The people who bring it forward, and the people who we say we represent the great French flute playing, are actually the exceptions. The exceptional people, and they're bringing it further and further and further. So there's no typical French traditional sound in the flute school. There's just an amazing high standard of virtuosity and mastery of the instrument and articulation or whatever, and wide repertoire. But each of the players have their own very individual sound and phrasing, their signature, their personality. It works better in some cases, less in some other cases, in different setups. Regarding orchestras, I travel enough to listen to various orchestras, and also in some festivals in Berlin we listen to so many different orchestras in the Musikwochen, in the music weeks, and I can tell you that all these orchestras sound very differently. In the same repertoire, like let's take the complete Shostakovich symphonies, for instance, in 2 weeks, with 15 different orchestras, and I can tell you it sounded really very different from one orchestra to the other one in the same concert hall. And I could really go and listen to each concert or each orchestra with conductors whom I know, in a repertoire that I know, and it's very comparable also. The only way to compare is to compare in the same place. If you listen to recordings, of course, the ideal to make it sound nice and to make it... This is, of course, something that you try to improve and correct the downsides of every acoustic, of every compensate, basically, every recording. So therefore, they will all sound more or less the same. To a certain level, but it's not comparable, because how do you want to compare things recorded in different studios in different times and places? I don't see even the point.
No, I'm happy. It's very inspiring. I still believe that we are all different and we all thrive for that originality.
I think music has a universal quality, of course, of its language, and it's an obvious thing to say, but. And a good musician will be a good musician in every country, of course. But it doesn't mean that that the way it's spoken, the way it's articulated, the way it's felt has to be the same everywhere. And this, because it is about human beings, about
Yes.
feelings also. This is why it's going to be extremely individual and not at all standardized. And this is why I'm fighting, struggling also while teaching or with my colleagues when I'm playing chamber music or recital, always going for the most subjective interpretation and the most subjective reading of each one's part. And then, of course, try agree on the language that we're speaking, but to be there, to really be fulfilling the meaning of these parts.
Where do you find your inspiration, both for music and in your life?
You know, I think the people who are inspired are actually the composers. And if I can spend some of my life in company of people like Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Brahms, Tchaikovsky, and Messiaen, and Debussy, Stravinsky, Bartók, and excuse me for all the ones I forgot, but this is just such an elevation of the soul and the spirit. This is why it's not work for me. But I'm discovering I'm not working on myself. I'm working actually. I'm investing my life, my time, into discovering, into communicating the great works of these geniuses, and this is what is driving me with a great appetite. Because the more you look into it, the more you discover, and the more you want to play or to share or to listen to. And I think this energy is not only as a player, as a performer. It can also be experienced as a concert presenter or promoter. For instance, by programming pieces, I know what it is, running a festival or I can imagine also running a season. There's a lot that can be done very actively in the music world, just because of the amazing number of great masterworks that we have at our disposal, and are just waiting there for us to kiss them awake.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.